If you are watching this live on YouTube right now, hello and welcome. If you're watching this, I'm here to encourage you to not wait until you have that big someday budget to start your landscaping or your gardening project. In fact, it is better to start with smaller steps before you make any big investments. So if you are here watching, you can hear me. Shout out hello in the chat. Even if you're watching the replay, please say hello in the chat. I do keep an eye on the chat, the replays, or I'm sorry, the comments in the replays as well. So please, I'm going to move on over here and go live on Instagram as well. And yeah, so if you're watching on Instagram too, I'm here to encourage you to not wait until you have that big someday budget to start your landscaping or garden project. Start with smaller steps before you make any big investments. It's actually better that way. So many people actually will wait to start. Hello, welcome. Many people wait to start until they have that big amount saved. It's kind of a someday thing. So they've got that big budget or these big visions that's going to require a big budget, right? The pool, the patio, then the new deck, the new play structure for kids. And I often wait. I often wish that people had reached out sooner instead of waiting because there are many steps that come before these big investments. And it's often better to take these steps earlier in the process when you have more time. And when I say time, the design process is something that you can work on over an extended period of time. While it does take time, it does take hours of work, researching ideas, testing out ideas, drawing things out, making a plan, breaking that plan down into steps. When you think about the garden design specifically, selecting plants, researching the best plant possibilities, there's a lot that goes into that, yes. But what I'm talking about, it's better to take time. It's better to chip away at this over a few weeks, a few months, just living everyday normal life and then working on your project as you have time instead of necessarily waiting until the start of the process. So, we got a question here. It's complicated to choose the right plants for the soil, the color, the textures, etc. Yeah, there's a lot of details that go into landscape design, garden design, especially when you're thinking about plants are living creatures too. And then you're also working in it's not like interior design, which there's so much art and science that goes into interior design, but when you're gardening, you're also landscaping, you're adding that extra layer of these things are living creatures. Plants are alive. There's unique individuals. You can plant a row of plants and there will be, even if when there's genetic clones, there can be differences in the root systems, for example. So you can have some plants that do better than others. There's just a lot more variables. So you can spend years in the planning process easily, nonstop. There's a certain amount of planning that's more planning than you need. There's a certain amount of planning that's not enough planning. So yes, it is. There's definitely a lot to keep in mind, and that's why it's good to have somebody who has some experience to kind of guide you through the steps of that process to help you know what to focus on specifically. But yeah, it's also a ton of fun too when you start putting things together, and a little bit of experimenting is an important part of the process. But even before you plant your first plant, the planning process, spending just little bits of time as you have time, chipping away at that process slowly over time is always better than when someone reaches out to me like, okay, I'd love to start. I want to landscape my entire front yard, backyard right away this spring. I've got a few weeks of time to work on this right now. Let's do it. It's much better to chip away at it slowly while you live normal life. And I think because people are waiting, they're saving up that big budget. They wait a really long time to really live in the space, to enjoy it and to enjoy the process of the design, the experimenting with plants and what plants do well in certain parts of the yard. There's definitely a lot of intermediary steps before making any big. When you think landscaping, a lot of times people will think about installing. I have an idea, a vision for the space. I want a shade structure in this corner, and I'd like a patio over here. Maybe someday a water feature. And they wait until they have a big chunk of time or a big chunk of money saved up before they get started. And there's a lot of little steps in the meantime. So if an idea of a new garden or landscaping project is something that excites you, please don't wait. This is what I love about gardening and landscape design. in general, this is why I do this. This is why I'm a gardening landscape design teacher for do-it-yourselfers, because there are actually a lot of low cost steps, a lot of low cost steps that you can take in the meantime. And I think overall, ultimately, your design is going to be better because of it. And just a few examples of intermediary steps too, if that's helpful. Just a seating area made out of mulch, for example, creating that free arborist chip mulch. I often encourage folks, when you have an idea of where you would like to install a big patio, maybe an elevated deck someday around in between garden beds or somewhere in the space. Sometimes it can be nice to test that out. The first step can be just marking out the space and just with, spray chalk, for example, or just laying a garden hose, some rope, whatever you have on hand out, and then bringing chairs and a table out there and just sitting in that space, spending time in that space. That's a very low cost way to just start thinking about the landscape design process. What would you like to place where, and testing those things out. That's the easiest version. Then the next step could be creating that space, making it out of mulch, so you have a usable patio, a seating area. Mulch might not be the fanciest thing as far as a soil covering. Maybe you have this very, a certain vision in your mind of what you would like that patio to look like, and that's great, but it can be good to take that intermediary step. Have it just test it out, a mulched area, and then later on, you can upgrade that to bring in gravel, which can be more expensive sometimes, right? Or, especially free arborist chips, mulch. That's a fantastic mulch material for making a temporary patio. Oftentimes people will change the shape or even change the location after they've tested things out. So just it's a very simple example of an intermediary step. Another example, so Courtney, who's in the membership, she had this dream of a pool, like a small swimming pool or a plunge pool in her yard. And shout out to Courtney if you're watching this. And she'd been waiting, kind of doing tons of research because she was so excited about the idea of this pool, saved up money for this pool. And instead of making that big investment and trying to make that big decision of which pool to get, if you do research into, the world of hot tubs and swimming pools, where there can be a few zeros associated with that. And a nice in between step for her, it was late spring, the weather was shifting, so she decided to go with a pool kit. So I would think it was around $200-$300 for that, as opposed to thousands for that beautiful dream someday pool that will increase property value, right? But in the meantime, she tried out a pool kit, and she placed it in an area in her yard where she had planned on installing this more permanent pool. And she discovered, after spending time in that pool, number one, that she loved it. It was absolutely worth it. She was able to enjoy it, through so many heat waves we got in the Pacific Northwest here over the summer so far. And she got to spend time in that space in the meantime, without it having to be this big someday decision. And then on top of that, she also learned that, the neighbors' dogs, she had the pool's closer to the fence. The neighbors' dogs were bothering her a little bit. They were doing their thing, but they were just a little bit too close to where she was trying to spend time relaxing in the pool. And so because of that, now next year, she knows she's going to shift the pool to a new spot in her yard. And yeah, there's just so many different ways you can experiment with things. And this is not even getting into the design process that can come before all of this, right? Where you're thinking about your ideas. And we got perennial profiles. Let me see what you got here. Chipping away slowly also provides opportunity to propagate plants from division from your own garden, rather than having to go spend money on new ones all at once. Absolutely. Plant propagation is so much fun. It's honestly, I struggle with sometimes getting plants in the ground, and I just tend to propagate plants, and then I will be planting them at job sites or giving them away, or because it's just one of my personal favorite parts of the process. It's so enjoyable, and absolutely, once you get something rolling too, if you start with a smaller garden bed, and get things going, gardens create so much abundance. It's absolutely incredible what you can propagate from a smaller space. So another cool method, plant propagation method, creating a seed bed where you set aside an area where you're just maybe in the fall, well, ideally in the fall, you plant a native wildflower mix. So with perennials and shrubs, and then or annuals too, but when you think about perennials and shrubs, those things are going to last multiple years, longer term. You could just set aside an area where you sow those seeds, and then as things come up, you can pot those things up and use that as just like your own little mini plant nursery. You're getting things rolling, start to pot things up as they come up. So native seeds, they like to experience the winter temperatures, and then they'll come up when conditions are right, when the time is right for them. And because they experience those cold temperatures, that can increase your germination rate as well. There's so many little projects that you could take on that are so much fun. In the meantime, all along the way, you're saving money on plants. Maybe you end up with more plants than you need. Then you can trade some of those extra plants with other people. Absolutely fantastic tip. It just, yeah, so many intermediary steps. Also, when you're thinking about when you're trying to calculate up how much is it going to cost for the space of my dreams. I'd love to have a vegetable garden over here and the kids play area over there, and you think about the soil covering materials and delivery fees and all of these things, and you add it all up to this one big grand number. A lot of folks will wait. They'll say, well, I don't have the budget for that, this is a dream, and they'll put that on the back burner and as a someday project. But you can take really small steps in the meantime and enjoy the process, and also you can learn a lot by testing things out in the meantime. So yeah, anyone who's if you're tuning in on live right now, hi. See 5 folks in the room. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. The other reason I wanted to go live today is to catch you all up on upcoming events, because there's been a lot going on. If you're on my newsletter list, the newsletter list is the best way to stay in the loop. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can go to my channel profile. There's an opt-in gardenprojectacademy.com/newsletter. Instagram, there's the link in the bio, which will go to kind of all of the things that are happening right now. Newsletter sign up is also there too. But newsletter list is kind of that's where when something goes live, they're the first people to hear about it typically. And or yeah, they are always the first people to hear about it, because there's so many places to post anymore. That kind of tends to be the heartbeat of what's going on, the schedule. Coming up next this Friday is landscaping on a budget. Hence the reason, I was feeling inspired to talk about this today. Inspired by this morning we had wildlife gardening workshop, which is fantastic. And so yeah, that also kind of prompted today's topic. But landscaping on a budget coming up next. It's Friday, September 12th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's Pacific Daylight Time. So if you are looking for an exciting Friday night, come talk about landscape design, gardening, bring your questions. So the focus of this workshop is creative ways to save money on your project, and how the design process just the way you lay out your design, how you can play to the strengths of the space, utilize the resources, the materials you already have, and just ways that just making tweaks to your plans, the process of creating a plan you can do a lot to save money on that final vision in general. Also, we'll talk about steps that you can take right away too. That is coming up next. So let me check my notes here. And yeah, this workshop, so the workshops are happening at least monthly right now. So some are happening at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So for some of the more international folks, we've got a couple different times happening. We've got some in the morning, some in the evenings. So that one's at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then we also have on Thursday, September 18th, 10 a.m. Pacific time, we have our next member design coaching call. So the membership is, so workshops are happening all the time. You can jump into one of those. It's $29 to join a workshop. If you can't attend live, there's also, of course, there's a replay that comes out after that. And there's a library. You can shop the replay library. I do make it so that over time, that library, most workshops will hang out for a little bit there. Some of them will go away sooner rather than others, depending on the schedule and such. So definitely jump in those as they become relevant to you. So Thursday, September 18th is the membership coaching call. So membership is another new thing that I'm really excited about, because so it's kind of a soft launch of this a few months ago with folks from the spring Design Together, like the guided landscape design class that happened this spring. And so we have a couple members so far. I've been mentioning these at the end of workshops occasionally, and to some folks that, were in that spring class too. So this is I haven't announced this on the newsletter list yet. So if you are watching this now, you are one of the first couple of people to hear about this. So the idea is $50 a month. You get just price, like included in that price instead of, all the workshops that are happening. Those all go in a library. So you get the replays for all of those. You can also attend any of these monthly or more workshops for free as a part of that membership, right? So the $50 per month. Then as the other thing is we do design coaching calls. So there's a limited number of spots in the membership because I can then remember everybody's yards and keep track of everything. So at this point, we're going to start with 10 folks. We're at three and a half right now. And so once it gets to 10, we're going to try it out, see what the pace of that's like. And then maybe go up to 15, maybe go up to 20. I like the idea of 20 people. I feel like that'll probably be the right number, but the the moment we'll kind of cap it off is when it feels full. If we do a live design coaching call, I want to be able to help everybody with their projects, answer questions, and keep track of what's going on and help everybody out. So if it starts to feel like we're hitting capacity with that, that's the moment that'll be shut down for new members. So this is, yeah, it's a new idea. Price is going to go up at some point, depending on how resources shift as the library grows. So yeah, we've got the workshop replay library as a part of that, the design coaching calls. And then the other thing is every month there will be a new resource based on what folks are learning this month was an iNaturalist for gardeners tutorial, because that's iNaturalist is one of my favorite tools for identifying seedlings that come up and just to work on just building your plant library, learning about plants, wildlife gardening. Again, that workshop happened this morning. That's identifying the creatures that are in your yard, the pollinators. It's pretty incredible what you can support in a normal backyard, just, a small backyard, even just a little spot by your mailbox. If you start planting native plants, I've had native longhorned bees show up after one growing season of planting a native plant that the longhorned bees love. It's absolutely cool. So anyway, the bonus this month was a really detailed tutorial on how to use iNaturalist for your design, for your gardening projects. So, and every month there'll be something new. Like we had a template library, we had an intro to planting a wildflower meadow, a bonus, that was last month. So every month there's going to be something new based on what folks in the membership are interested in. So again, this is a relatively new idea. If you have any thoughts, feedback on that too, let me know. Link is in the description below this. If you're on YouTube, gardenprojectacademy.com. If you go to the homepage there, just in the menu, there's a tab for membership. So I think it's gardenprojectacademy.com/membership. Let me test it out. Let's see. Should be. It's not. Well, in a few minutes it will be, because I will update that link to do a redirect. That would make sense. So please, if you have any questions in the chat, I'm happy to hang out for a few minutes. And if you have any garden projects you're working on, you have a plant question. So I'm based out of the Pacific Northwest corner of the USA. So when it comes to regionally specific stuff, I can be even more helpful. But I do, when it comes to landscape design, introduction to gardening, the design principles, best practices apply all over the place. I just to wrap up today too, I would encourage you, if you are just feeling really inspired or excited about the idea of your garden project, but you're kind of putting that on hold because it's not priority right now, right? Like, things are weird. We're saving money. Gardening for me, one of my favorite things about it is an outlet for me too. It is something that I feel like makes the world a better place as I propagate more plants and share plants with people, and working on projects, growing food. There's a lot that you can do without spending a ton of money. It's just about knowing how to approach it. And also, like, gardening is something, there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of pressure to plant things that are higher maintenance, and then you need to purchase all of the things that go with supporting these plants. But there are a lot of plants, native plants, great place to start, because there are they're around you. You can collect seeds ethically, of course, as long as you're just collecting a few. You're not throwing things out of whack. You're not collecting from things that are super rare or endangered, of course. But just walking down the street, I've just grabbed a few seeds from a plant, or teeny tiny cuttings from a plant, and propagated things. There's so much of gardening that can be done on a budget, little to no money. And that's, again, if you're looking for like the really creative, scrappy, some of my favorite strategies saving money on your project too. That's September 12th coming up. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And